Would you give up love just to please your family? In today's emotional story, CEO Toan finds himself torn between the woman he loves and his mother's expectations. When Madame Hong firmly rejects Ly Tu Diem and arranges a match with a wealthy heiress, Toan refuses to back down. His sister Ha, seeing the truth in Diem's heart, steps in to bridge the growing divide. Will love conquer tradition, or will family duty tear them apart? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories like this, and now, let's dive into the drama that will touch your soul. The late afternoon sun filtered through the sheer curtains of the grand living room, casting golden streaks on the polished marble floor. The silence in the room was thick, broken only by the distant chirping of birds and the subtle ticking of an antique clock. Toan stood by the window, his tall frame tense, his eyes clouded with worry. He had been summoned by his mother, Madame Hong, under the pretense of a casualty, but he knew her too well to believe it was merely that. Madame Hong entered the room with the quiet authority of someone who had always been in control. Dressed immaculately in an elegant silk dye, she took her seat slowly, gesturing for Toan to sit across from her. The butler poured the tea and disappeared, leaving mother and son in a heavy silence. She finally spoke, her voice cool but decisive. "Toan, it's time we talked about your future. About Ly Tu Diem." Toan's heart skipped a beat. He said nothing, waiting for her to continue. "I've made up my mind," she said firmly, placing the delicate porcelain cup onto its saucer. "I cannot accept her as your partner. She's not from a proper background. No lineage, no business connection. Just a pretty face and a humble story. You deserve better." The words cut deep, but Toan remained composed. "She's more than that, Mother," he replied, his voice calm but firm. "Diem is kind, loyal, and she understands me better than anyone ever has." But Madame Hong was unmoved. "You've always been emotional, Toan. That's your weakness. Love does not build empires, alliances do. And I've already spoken with Aunt Min. Her daughter, went on, just returned from London. She's intelligent, well-educated, and her family has been a friend of ours for decades. That is the kind of woman who belongs by your side." Toan stared at his mother in disbelief. "So this is it? You've arranged my future without even asking me?" "I'm doing what any mother would," she said, her tone growing sharper. "Your feelings will change. But legacy is forever. Think about the company, our name, our reputation. You are the CEO of a corporation that spans countries. You cannot afford to be sentimental." There was a pause, long, heavy, and full of unsaid words. Toan leaned forward, his eyes no longer soft, but blazing with quiet defiance. "I understand your concerns. I understand the pressure of legacy, power, and perception. but I'm not a pawn to be moved around for business advantages. I love DM. And I won't give her up. Madame Hong's face hardened. You're being foolish. No, Toan said, standing. I'm finally being true to myself. He walked away from the table, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the room. Behind him, Madame Hong sat stiffly, staring into her teacup, the steam long faded, but the bitterness still lingering. What she didn't realize yet was that her son had grown into a man who was ready to fight not just for a company, but for the woman he loved. From the upper floor, hidden behind the intricately carved wooden balustrade, Ha had heard every word of the conversation between her mother and younger brother. Her fingers clenched the polished handrail, knuckles white with quiet fury. Ha had always respected her mother, a woman of dignity, strength, and vision. But this time, she couldn't stay silent. Ly Tu Diem. The name brought a soft smile to her face even amidst the storm brewing downstairs. Ha remembered the first time she met the girl. Diem had arrived at the company's charity gala in a simple, elegant white dress. No designer labels. No air of pretense. But what struck her wasn't her appearance, it was the way Diem treated everyone, from the chairman's wife to the kitchen staff, with the same gentle kindness. Diem wasn't raised in wealth, but she carried herself with a quiet grace that no money could ever buy. And more importantly, she had changed Toan. Ha had seen her brother evolve from a man consumed by endless board meetings and sterile power plays, into someone who laughed more, slept better, and smiled with his eyes. There was a lightness in him, one that had been missing for years. That light had a name. It was DM. That evening, Ha found her mother sitting in the private library, her expression unreadable, a leather-bound book resting unopened on her lap. The room smelled faintly of old paper and fresh tea, but the air between them was heavy. Me, Ha began softly, stepping inside. Madame Hong looked up, startled but composed. You heard. Ha nodded. I did. And I need to speak. Her mother's brow furrowed. Ha, this is between me and Toan. No, me, Ha interrupted gently, but firmly. It's between all of us. Because what affects Toan, affects this family. And DM, she's not who you think she is. Madame Hong sighed, closing the book slowly. She's not one of us. But maybe that's what makes her perfect for Toan, Ha said, taking a seat across from her. You always taught us that strength isn't just inherited, it's proven. DM didn't have the privileges we did, but she built herself. She worked her way through school, she helped her sick father, and yet she never let bitterness harden her. She's not a min, her mother said quietly. Not a Nguyen. She brings nothing to the table. She brings heart, Ha replied. And peace. And loyalty. And for the first time in years, I see Toan happy, not because of a business deal, but because of love. Isn't that worth something? Madame Hong looked away, her fingers tightening around the book. I'm doing what's best for him. Then trust him, Ha said gently. Toan isn't a child. He's the CEO. You raised him to be strong, principled, smart. If he chooses DM, maybe it's because he sees something we don't. There was silence for a long moment. Ha reached forward, placing her hand gently over her mother's. I'm not asking you to accept her today, she said. I'm just asking you to look again, this time with open eyes. And if you do see her, please, don't say anything that might hurt her. She's trying so hard to be worthy in your eyes. Please don't break her spirit. Madame Hong didn't answer. But for the first time that day, her stern expression faltered, and Ha could almost see a trace of hesitation, a crack in the wall. It was a start. That night, sleep evaded Madame Hong. She lay awake in her grand bedroom, staring at the intricately painted ceiling that had watched over her for decades. The quiet hum of the night surrounded her, but her thoughts were louder echoes of Toan's defiance, "Pause please," and the name that now lingered heavily in her mind, Ly Tu Diem. She sat up slowly, reached for the glass of water on her bedside table, and took a sip, her fingers trembling just slightly. She had always believed she knew what was best for her children, for the family, for the business. Everything she did was rooted in structure, in legacy, in preserving the image their family had built over generations. But tonight, something was different. For the first time in years, she felt uncertain. The next morning, as the sun rose gently over the Hanoi skyline, Ha found her mother already dressed, seated by the garden terrace with a cup of tea. It was a rare sight. Normally, her mother's mornings began behind closed doors, with staff ensuring every detail was perfect before she emerged. Today, she looked still. Not weak, but contemplative. Did you sleep? Ha asked softly, approaching. Madame Hong nodded once. Not much. There was silence between them for a moment before she continued. You said something last night, that DM is trying to be worthy in my eyes. That she's careful not to offend me, even though I've never given her kindness. I sat beside her. It's true. She must hate me, her mother said quietly. No, Ha said with conviction. She's afraid of you. But she doesn't hate you. She wants to earn your respect. She loves Toan that much. Madame Hong looked out at the koi pond, where the water shimmered beneath the morning sun. I've always thought emotions were a distraction, something that clouds judgment. But perhaps I've used that as an excuse to distance myself from things I feared I couldn't control. She paused. Then, more quietly, Toan reminds me of his father. Stubborn. Loyal. Once he loves, he never lets go. A faint smile tugged at Ha's lips. And that's exactly why DM will never hurt him. Madame Hong let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. I won't pretend I've accepted her yet. That would be dishonest. But I will meet her, not as a judge, but as a mother. And I will not say anything to hurt her. Ha's eyes welled slightly. That's all I hoped for, me. Later that afternoon, Madame Hong made a quiet request to Toan's assistant. Tell him I'd like to meet Miss Diem. Not at the office. Not with formality. Just the three of us. At home. When Toan received the message, he stared at it in disbelief, his heart thudding. For weeks, he had prepared for a war. Now, a door had cracked open. Not wide, but just enough to let Hope Indiana. When Diem heard the news, she froze, her hands tightening around her apron. She wants to meet me, she whispered. Why? Toan gently brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. Because she's ready to try. And that's more than I ever expected. That evening, as the sun began to dip beyond the city skyline, casting the house in amber light, Diem stood in front of the mirror, nervous but composed. She wasn't stepping into a battlefield. She was walking into a chance, fragile, uncertain, but real. And that, sometimes, was all love needed to begin healing.
Hello, xin chào tất cả mọi người. Mình chính là tác giả của kênh Ly Tu Diem Review. Tập ngày hôm nay, mẹ của CEO Toan đã chính thức không chấp nhận Ly Tu Diem quen với CEO Toan. Liệu rằng Toan và Diễm có vượt qua được thử thách thuyết phục mẹ Toan hay không? Tất cả sẽ được hé lộ ở các tập sau. Đặc biệt là chị gái của Toan, chị Thúy sẽ giúp gì được cho Toan và Diễm trong việc thuyết phục mẹ của Toan, và bà nội của Toan có giúp được gì hay không. Chờ đón ở các tập sau. Các bạn theo dõi video, nếu các bạn thấy hay thì mọi người hãy cho mình xin một nút like, một nút chia sẻ và để lại bình luận dưới video nhé. Xin cảm ơn và chào các bạn. Bye bye.